He sang a lot of songs. Hundreds of them. Songs about love and songs about heartbreak. Songs about dancing and songs about being lonely. But there was one song, recorded in 1969, that felt different. It wasn't a rocker, it wasn't a simple ballad about a girl. It was a story. And it was a story steeped in a kind of sadness that felt ancient and personal. The performance was raw. His voice, usually so powerful and commanding, was tender, almost fragile. It cracked with an emotion that felt too real for a recording studio. The song tells a simple, devastating story. A young boy walks in and sees his father crying. The man is looking at a picture of his wife who is gone. The child doesn't fully understand death, but he understands pain. He sees his father's sorrow. So the child tries to comfort the man. He puts his arms around his father's neck and tells him not to cry. He reminds his dad that he's not alone. He says, "You've still got me and little brother." He promises that he and his brother will play with their father just like their mommy used to do. It's a child's attempt to fix an unfixable situation, to patch up a wound so deep it has swallowed his father whole. When Elvis sang those words, he wasn't just performing a song written by someone else. He wasn't just an actor playing a part, he was channeling a ghost from his own past. He was stepping back in time, back to the single most traumatic event of his life. To understand the bottomless well of sadness in that recording, you have to go back to the beginning. You have to understand who he lost, and what she meant to him. Her name was Gladys. To say Elvis loved his mother is a profound understatement. It doesn't capture the depth of their connection. It was a bond forged in poverty, hardship, and a shared secret tragedy. They grew up together in a 2-room shotgun shack in Tupelo, Mississippi. There was no money, there was barely enough food. His father Vernon was a kind but often shiftless man who struggled to hold a job. For a time, Vernon even ended up in prison, leaving Gladys and a young Elvis to fend for themselves. In that little house, in that world of constant struggle, they had only each other. Their bond was cemented on the day he was born. Elvis was a twin. His brother Jesse Garon was stillborn. Gladys nearly died during the birth. From that moment on, Elvis was the survivor. He was the one who had lived for two. Gladys poured all her love, all her hopes, and all her fears into her one living son. She was terrified of losing him, too. She called him by a pet name, Satnin. They developed their own private language, a way of communicating that no one else could fully penetrate. He was her whole world, and she was his anchor. She was the one constant, the one source of unconditional love in a life defined by uncertainty. When he was a boy, he promised her that one day he would make it big. He would buy her a big house and a fancy car. He would take care of her so she would never have to worry again, and he did. He was a good son. He kept his promises. As soon as the money started rolling in, the very first thing he did was buy her a pink Cadillac. It became a famous symbol of his love for her. Then he bought Graceland, a mansion in Memphis, so his parents could live in comfort. But fame was a double-edged sword. It gave him the means to provide for her, but it also took him away from her. He was always on the road, touring, making movies in Hollywood. He was surrounded by a sea of new people, managers, hangers-on, girlfriends. The simple, quiet world he and Gladys had shared was gone forever, and she couldn't cope. Gladys was a simple countrywoman. She was out of place in the grand halls of Graceland. She was suspicious of the new people in her son's life. She was lonely. The mansion felt empty to her. She missed the days when it was just her, Vernon, and their boy sitting on the porch of a tiny house. While Elvis was conquering the world, she was at home, lost and worried, sick. She feared for his safety. She feared the world was changing him. Her health began to decline. She gained weight. She started drinking to numb the anxiety and the loneliness. The boy she had held so close was now a global superstar, a figure on a screen, a voice on the radio. She was proud, but she was also heartbroken. She was losing him. The final blow came in 1958. The United States Army drafted Elvis Presley. At the peak of his fame, he was being sent to Germany for 2 years. For Gladys, this was an unbearable separation. The thought of her only son being thousands of miles away in a foreign country was too much to bear. Her health, already fragile, collapsed completely. While he was in basic training at Fort Hood, Texas, he got the call. His mother was sick, very sick. He was granted emergency leave and rushed back to Memphis. He went straight to the hospital. He barely recognized the woman in the bed. She had deteriorated so quickly. He sat by her side, holding her hand, talking to her, trying to will her back to health. But it was too late. On August 14th, 1958, Gladys Love Presley died of acute hepatitis. She was 46 years old. Elvis was 23. His world ended that day. The anchor was gone. The one person who loved him without agenda, who knew him before the fame, was gone. His grief was not quiet or dignified, it was primal. It was a complete and total unraveling. At her funeral, he was inconsolable. He wept, he wailed, he threw himself over her casket, crying, "Oh God, everything I have is gone." He talked to her as if she could still hear him, begging her not to leave him. He told friends he wanted to die, to be buried with her. Those who were there said it was the most harrowing display of grief they had ever witnessed. The king of rock and roll was just a boy who had lost his mommy, and standing right there beside him was his father, Vernon, being a man who had just lost his wife of 25 years, a man who was as lost and broken as his son. In that moment, there were two survivors, a father and a son, left behind to face a world that suddenly felt cold and empty. Elvis had to watch his own father crumble while trying to manage a sorrow so immense it threatened to consume him entirely. He was the son, watching his daddy cry. He never got over it. He went to Germany, served his time, came home, and resumed his career. But something inside him was broken forever. He rarely, if ever, spoke of his mother in public again. The pain was too deep. It was a private wound he carried for the rest of his life. He filled the void with noise, with people, with work, with pills. But the void was always there. Fast forward 11 years. It's 1969. Elvis is in the middle of a massive career revival. After years of making bland Hollywood movies, he's back to making serious music. He's recording at the American Sound Studio in Memphis, the legendary sessions that would produce some of his greatest work. He's raw, he's hungry, and he's ready to sing songs with real meaning again. One of the writers who frequented the studio was a young Texan named Mac Davis. Davis had written a song based on his own experience. He remembered as a child, after his parents' divorce, seeing his father's sadness and trying to comfort him. He wrote a simple story from the perspective of a child telling his heartbroken father not to cry. When the song was presented to Elvis, it must have hit him like a physical blow. The lyrics weren't just a story. They were his story. They were a direct portal back to August 1958. As we walk on, I'm hazy. Today was the day we laid mommy to rest. Those lines were a photograph of his own memory. The child's voice, pleading with his father, was the voice of every child who has ever tried to shoulder an adult's pain. Don't cry, Daddy. Daddy, please don't cry. When Elvis stepped up to the microphone to sing this song, he wasn't just interpreting lyrics. He was testifying. The emotion you hear in his voice is not an act. It's the sound of a man reliving the worst day of his life. He is simultaneously both characters in the song. He is the grieving father, Vernon, lost in a haze of sorrow. And he is the young son, the 23-year-old Elvis, trying to be strong, trying to hold his father together while his own world is falling apart. Think about that central line, "You've still got me in little brother." For Elvis, that line had another, even more tragic layer of meaning. His little brother was Jesse Garon, the twin who never drew a breath, the ghost who had haunted his entire life. In that line, Elvis was the surviving child, comforting his father, but perhaps he was also acknowledging the other son, the one who wasn't there. The song was a confluence of all his deepest sorrows, the loss of his mother, the memory of his lost twin, and the shared silent grief of his father. The recording is a masterpiece of vulnerability. His voice is gentle, almost a whisper at times. You can hear the strain, the effort it takes to get the words out without breaking down. It's a performance stripped of all bravado, of all the usual swagger of the king. What's left is just the man, a son. A son who never stopped missing his mother. He had buried that pain for over a decade. He had hidden it behind the gold-laced suits, the Hollywood scripts, and the adoring crowds. But in the quiet of that recording studio, with just a microphone and a simple, sad story, the wall came down. For 3 minutes, he allowed himself to go back to that dark place. He allowed himself to feel it all again. And in doing so, he gave the world one of the most honest and heartbreaking performances of his life. He was no longer singing about blue suede shoes or hound dogs. He was singing about the fundamental human experience of loss. He was singing about the day his world went black. He was singing about watching his father weep. He was singing about his mother Gladys. The song, of course, is "Don't Cry Daddy."